Douglas Bryant, director of the University Library, who will thank the person who's made all of this possible. Douglas?
Thank you, Lou. As we gather tonight for what Mr. Martin has said is the first in the Corliss Lamont series of poetry readings in the Harvard Library, it's my particular delight to have the opportunity to thank Corliss Lamont for making this all possible. Mr. Lamont, as I'm sure many of you know, is himself an author of far-reaching interests, a longtime professor in the philosophy department at Columbia, a poet himself, and coming from family much dedicated to the concerns of poetry and to the place of poetry in the lives of all of us. Mr. Lamont graduated from Harvard, I'm pleased to say, in the class of 24, took his doctorate at Columbia, and as I say, was for many, many years in the philosophy department at Columbia. His establishment of this series is a furtherance of his concern for the encouragement and the recognition of young poets whose work merits this kind of recording and this kind of reading to an audience of just this character. Miss Glück's reading tonight will take its place in the extraordinarily rich and varied collection of the readings of contemporary poets of their own verse. I'm reminded I'm using the word contemporary rather loosely, perhaps, since one of the recordings that we're most fond of in this collection is a recording of Tennyson, reading, of all things, The Charge of the Light Brigade. And so welcome to the company, Miss Glück. And as Louis Martin has suggested, this is but the latest expression in the long and extremely important association of the Lamont family with Harvard University. A varied association, rich in so many ways, that has meant much to the university, and particularly to its library. Indeed, the building in which we're meeting tonight is, of course, the Lamont Library, as you all know. And Corliss, it gives me particular personal and institutional delight in thanking you very much indeed for making this all possible. Thank you.
And now to introduce our poet of the evening, Mr. Stratis Haviaras, curator of the Woodbury Poetry Room, without whose energy, imagination, initiative, and constant battering on the door, we wouldn't be here tonight. Stratis?
Thank you. We did not know that we were competing with another series tonight. I think we did pretty well, considering the competition. And I'm grateful to Louise, who accepted our invitation and the challenge to complete with the other series. Louise Glück was born in New York City and raised on Long Island. She studied at Sarah Lawrence College for a while, she says, and then at the School of General Studies at Columbia. That probably means to me that she dropped out from Sarah Lawrence and got a master's degree from Columbia. In any case, Louise has had a number of grants and fellowships from the Rockefeller and Guggenheim Foundations and the National Endowment for the Arts. And last year, she was one of 6 poets who visited England in a special bicentennial program. But it is, of course, her poems that bring us here together tonight, poems which I personally find very inventive and masterfully controlled. And that, I think, is a very rare, exciting combination, a combination of such a gift and such a discipline. To quote Miss Wendler, these poems rise from the page. Tonight we'll hear them in the poet's own voice. Thank you very much. Louise Glück.
If any of you in the back can't hear the poet's own voice, you should please so indicate. I'm going to read. No, you can't hear it all. Oh, God. That's not going to help. I'll try to speak as, well, that's not natural. I'll try to speak as loudly as I can. How's that? It's completely unnatural, but. Yes.
From the tune. Is that a little bit better? Sure.
I think it's sort of terrifying, but. Well, I'm going to read a few poems from each of these books and then new work. The first poem is called The Racer's Widow. The elements have merged into solicitude. Spasms of violets rise above the mud and weed, and soon the birds and ancients will be starting to arrive, bereaving points south. But never mind. It is not painful to discuss his death. I have been primed for this, for separation, for so long. But still his face assaults me. I can hear that car careen again, the crowd coagulate on asphalt in my sleep. And watching him, I feel my legs like snow that finally let him go as he lies draining there. And see how even he did not get to keep that lovely body. Cottonmouth Country. Fishbones walked the waves off Haviaras, and there were other signs that death wooed us by water, wooed us by land. Among the pines, an uncurled cottonmouth that rolled on moss, reared in the polluted air. Birth, not death, is the hard loss. I know. I also left a skin there. The first poem that I'll read from this book is also the most recent that was included in the book. It's called Messengers. You have only to wait, they will find you. The geese flying low over the marsh, glittering in black water, they find you. And the deer, how beautiful they are, as though their bodies did not impede them. Slowly they drift into the open through bronze panels of sunlight. Why would they stand so still if they were not waiting, almost motionless, until their cages rust, the shrubs shiver in the wind, squat and leafless? You have only to let it happen. That cry, release, release, like the moon wrenched out of earth and rising full in its circle of arrows, until they come before you like dead things, saddled with flesh, and you above them, wounded and dominant. This is called Nativity Poem. I was often criticized not by my immediate family, but by its multiple arms, because I kept writing about Christian mythology. And one aunt or another was always sort of drawing me aside and saying, "But Louise, we have so many good stories of our own." Well, and I tried. Nativity Poem. It is the evening of the birth of God. Singing, and with gold instruments the angels bear down upon the barn, their wings neither white wax nor marble. So they have been recorded, burnished, literal in the composed air. They raise their harps above the beasts, likewise gathering, the lambs, and all the startled silken chickens. And Joseph, off to one side, has touched his cheek, meaning he is weeping. But how small he is, withdrawn from the hollow of his mother's life, the raw flesh bound in linen, as the stars yield light to delight his sense, for whom there is no ornament. Retreating into the pagan, a poem called Pomegranate, which is, as I hope you will know, spoken by Persephone. I hope you'll know it because when I've tried to tell the story from which the poem comes, I discover that I spend far longer telling the story than I spend reading the poem. So, Pomegranate. Can you hear in the back now? That's a slow yes. That's the kind of yes that's really a no, but you're too polite. I don't know what to do, so keep being polite. Pomegranate. First, he gave me his heart. It was red fruit containing many seeds, the skin leathery, unlikely. I preferred to starve, bearing out my training. Then he said, "Behold how the world looks, minding your mother." I peered under his arm. What had she done with color and odor? Whereupon he said, "Now there is a woman who loves with a vengeance," adding, "Consider she is in her element, the trees turning to her, whole villages going under, although in hell the bushes are still burning with pomegranates." At which he cut one open and began to suck. When he looked up at last, it was to say, "My dear, you are your own woman finally, but examine this grief your mother parades over our heads, remembering that she is one to whom these depths were not offered." The blind girl. When I was 10, God sent 2 arrows meant for my eyes. 2 arrows, 2 capsules of snow that shattered so the bandage froze to my face. When they took it off, I was blind. Nurse, How strange the darkness is, not black at all, but the passive color of absence, as though one afternoon an image came of autumn, of a garden where all color had converged to fade, and faded, and was not replaced. I listened. I heard voices. I heard my own voice rising from the still, transparent body of an angel, as calmly as the wind lifts the edges of the curtains, letting in the measured light. The next poem is a longer poem, and for me, monumentally long. It's written in sections, 5, each of which has its own naturally number and also title. And the sections are intended to represent an alternation of voices. I hope you hear that. The poem is called The Garden. The fear of birth. One sound, then the hiss and whir of houses gliding into their places, and the wind leafs through the bodies of animals. But my body that could not content itself with health, why should it be sprung back into the cord of sunlight? It will be the same again, this fear, this inwardness, until I am forced into a field without immunity, even to the least shrub that walks stiffly out of the dirt, trailing the twisted signature of its root, even to a tulip, a red claw. And then the losses, one after another, all supportable. The garden. The garden admires you. For your sake, it smears itself with green pigment, the ecstatic reds of the roses, so that you will come to it with your lovers. And the willows, see how it has shaped these green tents of silence. Yet there is still something you need. Your body, so soft, so alive among the stone animals. Admit that it is terrible to be like them, beyond harm. The fear of love. That body lying beside me like obedient stone. Once, its eyes seemed to be opening. We could have spoken. At that time, it was winter already. By day, the sun rose in its helmet of fire, and at night also, mirrored in the moon. Its light passed over us freely, as though we had lain down in order to leave no shadows, only these 2 shallow dents in the snow. And the past, as always, stretched before us, still, complex, impenetrable. How long did we lie there, as arm in their cloaks of feathers, the gods walked down from the mountain we built for them. Origins. As though a voice were saying, you should be asleep by now. But there was no one, nor had the air darkened, though the moon was there, already filled in with marble, as though in a garden crowded with flowers, a voice had said, "How dull they are, these golds, so sonorous, so repetitious," until you closed your eyes, lying among them, all stammering flame. And yet you could not sleep. Poor body, the earth still clinging to you. The fear of burial. In the empty field, in the morning, the body waits to be claimed. The spirit sits beside it on a small rock. Nothing comes to give it form again. Think of the body's loneliness. At night, pacing the sheared field, its shadow buckled tightly around. Such a long journey, and already the remote, trembling lights of the village, not pausing for it as they scan the rows. How far away they seem, the wooden doors, the bread and milk laid like weights on the table. The next poem is one of a series, well, no, series is incorrect, is one of several poems that I've written dealing with Eden, not in transformation. This is called The Logos, and I'll read others later. They were both still, the woman mournful, the man branching into her body. But God was watching. They felt his gold eye projecting flowers on the landscape. Who knew what he wanted? He was God and a monster. So they waited, and the world filled with his radiance, as though he wanted to be understood. Far away, in the void that he had shaped, he turned to his angels. The mirror. Watching you in the mirror, I wonder what it is like to be so beautiful, and why you do not love but cut yourself, shaving like a blind man. I think you let me stare so you can turn against yourself with greater violence, needing to show me how you scrape the flesh away scornfully and without hesitation, until I see you correctly as a man bleeding, not the reflection I desire. How's the volume, Stratis? It makes a sign. This poem is called The Dream of Mourning. Mourning in the title is O-U-R. I take it you know how to spell the rest. The word occurs again in the poem, and obviously it's no problem on the page, but when it comes in the poem, it's mourning as what dawn signals. And it happens in the middle, so you can rest easily through the first two stanzas because it's not going to come up. And now you have to stop laughing because it's a very painful poem. The Dream of Mourning. I sleep so you will be alive. It is that simple. The dreams themselves are nothing. They are the sickness you control, nothing more. I rush toward you in the summer twilight, not in the real world, but in the buried one where you are waiting as the wind moves over the bay, toying with it, forcing thin ridges of panic. And then the morning comes, demanding prey. Remember? And the world complies. Last night was different. Someone fucked me awake. When I opened my eyes, it was over. All the pain gone by which I knew my life. And for one instant, I believed I was entering the stable dark of the earth and thought it would hold me. Portland, 1968. You stand as rocks stand, to which the sea reaches in transparent waves of longing. They are marred finally. Everything fixed is marred, and the sea triumphs like all that is false, all that is fluent and womanly. From behind, the lens opens for your body. Why should you turn? It doesn't matter who the witness is, for whom you are suffering, for whom you are standing still. This next is another of those poems of which the Logos was one. Adam, Eve, Garden. It's called Nocturne. A forest rose from the earth. Oh, pitiful, so needing God's furious love. Together they were beasts. They lay in the fixed dusk of his negligence. From the hills, wolves came, mechanically drawn to their human warmth, their panic. Then the angels saw how he divided them, the man, the woman, and the woman's body. Above the churned reeds, the leaves let go a slow moan of silver. This poem is called Rosy. Rosy is the name of a dog with which the poem occupies itself. It's dedicated to a friend of mine who is very gifted and very intelligent, and who makes use of that intelligence and those gifts to systematically destroy herself. Not, I suppose, by choice, but Rosy. For Sandra. When you walked in with your suitcase, leaving the door open so the night showed in a black square behind you with its little stars like nail heads, I wanted to tell you, you were like the dog that came to you by default on 3 legs. Now that she is again no one's, she pursues her more durable relationships with traffic and cold nature, as though it pains to wound herself so that she will not heal. She is past being taken in by kindness, preferring wet streets. What death claims, it does not abandon. You understand, the animal means nothing to me. I discovered when I had a child about 4 years ago that indeed my subjects changed, though not in the ways that I could perhaps have predicted, which is to say I didn't make little journal-type poems about his first step and first, well, actually I did make a poem about his first word, but I try not to do that. What I found happened was that there was made available to me a part of my own history from which I had never before written. I had a sister who died before I was born, died in earliest infancy, and it had always been true that her absence shaped our family structure, and I had been aware of that since childhood. But it seemed that having my own child that released to me something there that hadn't been previously available. So that I found myself writing either directly about that sister, as in poems I'll read a bit further, or just generally writing poems about children and disaster. I think that one need not have a dead sibling to feel, having had a child, the way objects that had been in past harmless become possible agents of destruction. I mean, the bookend that was always before just there to keep the books in order becomes the thing that can permanently wound. And being by nature not optimistic, it was very easy for me to see. This is a poem called The Drowned Children. You see, they have no judgment, so it is natural that they should drown. First the ice taking them in, and then all winter their wool scarves floating behind them as they sink, until at last they are quiet, and the pond lifts them in its manifold dark arms. But death must come to them differently, so close to the beginning, as though they had always been blind and weightless. Therefore the rest is dreamed, the lamp, the good white cloth that covered the table, their bodies. And yet they hear the names they used, like lures slipping over the pond. What are you waiting for? Come home, lost in the waters, blue and permanent. It's a poem for my husband. It's called For John. Look at my hand, poor beast, too frightened to be fed. It holds to what it knows. A whole mind can be like that, like a sky ruled by the clean black of directive, when the limbs are free of blossom and subterfuge. There are lives sustained by negation. Do you know what it means to let go? This poem is a series of 3 poems, again, each with its own title. And these are the poems that came out of that preoccupation with my sister. One of them is exhibited in its multiple drafts, either ahead of me and behind you. I have never before done anything like that because my early versions are so hideous that I usually scrap them. The poem's called Descending Figure. The Wanderer. At twilight I went into the street. The sun hung low in the iron sky, ringed with cold plumage. If I could write to you about this emptiness. Along the curb, groups of children were playing in the dry leaves. Long ago, at this hour, my mother stood at the lawn's edge, holding my little sister. Everyone was gone. I was playing in the dark street with my other sister, whom death had made so lonely. Night after night, we watched the screened porch filling with a gold magnetic light. Why was she never called? Often I would let my own name glide past me, though I craved its protection. The Sick Child. A small child is ill, has wakened. It is winter, past midnight in Antwerp. Above a wooden chest, the stars shine, and the child relaxes in her mother's arms. The mother does not sleep. She stares fixedly into the bright museum. By spring, the child will die. Then it is wrong to hold her. Let her be alone, without memory, as the others wake, terrified, scraping the dark paint from their faces. For my sister. Far away, my sister is moving in her crib. The dead ones are like that, always the last to quiet. Because however long they lie in the earth, they will not learn to speak, but remain uncertainly pressing against the wooden bars, so small the leaves hold them down. Now, if she had a voice, the cries of hunger would be beginning. I should go to her. Perhaps if I sang very softly, her skin so white, her head covered with black feathers. The last poem I'll read is again from that sequence. It's called The Clearing. Gradually, over many years, the fur disappeared from their bodies until they stood in the bright light, strange to one another. Nothing was as before. Their hands trembled, seeking the familiar. Nor could they keep their eyes from the white flesh on which wounds would show clearly, like words on a page. And from the meaningless browns and greens, at last God arose, his great shadow darkening the sleeping bodies of his children, and leapt into heaven. How beautiful it must have been, the earth, that first time seen from the air. Thank you.
It's not all that late, and Ms. Glück said that she would be happy to try to respond to any questions that people might have about these poems or the craft in general. Floor is open if you so desire. Or do you know that there is a reception in the Farnsworth room?
Maybe
Farnsworth room
maybe we
next
could do it
door?
that way, that we could sort of retire there, and if anyone has questions.
Okay, fine, you're available.
Yeah.
Fine, the Farnsworth room, as most of you know, is next door. And welcome, and thanks again, Ms. Bryant, Director.